Everybody, it's Jim from Sprague Woodturning. This week we are going to combine some maple burl along with some really awesome tinted resins from Designer Epoxy to make a beautiful Mother's Day gift for a friend of mine. So the first order of business is to actually clean this burl up. I took this from stock, and this is a dried maple burl that's been through my kilns. But of course it's got anchor seal on it. So we got to get rid of that anchor seal. And then once that anchor seal is gone, we'll have to clean up the edge to make sure that the resin has a good bonding surface to the wood and not to the bark. Also, for you righties, take note that I'm doing this inboard. The only reason for that is because I was too lazy to switch the jaws over into my the chuck that I use on the outboard end of my lathe, because my lathe has different size spindles on inboard and outboard. So sometimes it's a pain to switch jaws around your chuck. So anyway, I was having a lazy day, so I decided to just do it inboard. So to prevent delaminations, there's a couple of key things you really need to consider. First off, make sure that your pieces are dry. If you try and cast something that's still got a fairly high moisture content in it, it's going to move and probably delaminate from the resin. The other thing is make sure that you sand or scuff up the area where the resin's going to be sitting where the bark was, because underneath that bark it can actually be quite smooth, so it's important to give that resin a tooth to bond to so you don't have any delamination issues as well. We got our burl all cleaned up. Let's figure out how we're going to cast this. So if you've been here for a while, you know what I like to do with these castings, and I'm using rice. And the reason I'm using rice is that the bowl will embed, for the new people, the bowl will embed into that rice and push up on the plastic. That way, hopefully you don't use as much resin when you're casting. And of course, just a couple of kitchen bags here to keep the resin from leaking into the rice, hopefully. I think that should work. Let's mix up some resin. This week we're going to be using Art Cast again from Designer Epoxy. This will give us great color separation. So if you're looking for color separation, the only limitation on this is you can't pour it over an inch thick. So, other than that, this is the easiest way to achieve color separation. So one of the colors we're going to be using is Rainbow Blue, and the other one is going to be Blue Laguna. Now initially I was just going to go with the two blues, and after I got done mixing them up, I said, I think I'll throw some gold in there too. That will bling it up a little bit. It will also help anchor the color of the wood to the resin. All right, I'm just going to put these in a clean room where there's some heat. That way they warm up, and once I hit about 45 degrees, we'll start pouring. Decided to use the pearl gold. You know me, I like my pearl pigment, so it was rather fitting for this piece. All right, things are getting close to 45 degrees Celsius, so I'm going to burn the bubbles off and we'll start pouring. Now, I do not have a very large area to pour, so I don't know how this is going to go, but I guess we will find out here. My intention is to pour from each side, and then about halfway through, I'm going to, I might stop and put some gold in. You know how it goes. If you're new to resin casting, the reason why we want these resins to warm up to about 45 degrees is because, they're starting to set. So that means that when you put them into your casting, you'll achieve good color separation. If you put them in right after mixing, there's a good chance that they're all going to combine to make one solid color. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more, but that's not too bad. Throw this in the pressure pot, and we will see you tomorrow. All right, it's the next day, and I think that we've had some decent color separation. So we can get the stuff out of here. Oh, yeah. I never covered this, and this is mostly for the new people. The reason why I put that bucket material in there is to keep the plastic from encroaching into the area where the resin's going to be sitting. If you don't put in some sort of a barrier, that plastic will dip down into the resin area, and then you've got plastic embedded in your resin, and nobody wants that. Blue Laguna on one side with some gold. Rainbow blue on the other with some gold. This should look real nice when it's done. All right, first things first, I'm going to put a glue block on the bottom of this. This is a little thinner up here than I'd like it to be, so we're probably going to have to mount this on the cold jaws to make sure that we get things nice and centered. One of the issues that I'm finding with this rice and plastic method is it's hard to know when the casting is sitting flat on its base inside of that bed of rice. It doesn't really become a major factor here, but it certainly could in some castings. If you're working with a bowl that's got, say, a flat top on it, you could even put marks on the inside of the bucket where you could look in and see, okay, we know that it's sitting flat. So this one went in a little bit, off center, and it's not a huge deal, but it certainly could be on some castings. I should also mention that we're using the Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. This is the number 3. So the good thing about putting this in the cold jaws is that we know that for the most part things are going to be centered when the glue block goes on the bottom of this, because I do plan on putting a glue block on this. That way we can, maximize the height of this piece. It's not a super huge bowl to begin with, so I don't want to really take anything off the size of this, as much as I can anyway. So the goal right now is just to get rid of all this excess resin. That way when the glue block is put on the bottom and it's turned outboard, it won't be so out of balance. So that's one way of getting around that, and it just makes sense to do it prior to moving it outboard. So I realize that it isn't Mother's Day, so all the men can stop panicking. This just happened to be in the queue at the time. And the other thing too with my business is sometimes I have to actually mail things out. So that's another reason why this is early. That way it can get to its intended owner before the video airs, if you're curious. For those who are curious, that is the Phoenix. And again, this is from Hunter Tool Systems as well. Great thing about that is you can get into those tight little areas, especially around that live center. And I don't know, it's got a really fine point, and I think it's a really awesome tool. I'm glad it's in my inventory. And the last little bit, just take the parting tool, clean up as much as I can before I remove the live center. Now this is almost a straight walled bowl at the very top, so I'm taking very, very light cuts here, because there is a good possibility that this could come off the lathe right now. So light cuts are the key. And once I get it trimmed up, hit it with some 60 grit and get it ready for the glue block. Speaking of the glue block, there it is. Don't spare the glue. If you do, you might regret it. Just like most burls, this one's no exception. It had a bunch of little fine cracks, mostly in the dark areas on the burl. So I'm just using some thin CA glue here to seal up those cracks before we take our first cut on the outside of this piece. And by the way, we are now mounted outboard. And again, if you're new here, the reason why I like to turn outboard is because I'm left-handed. So I'm turning on a 20-inch general variable speed, electronic variable speed, that has left-hand threads on the outboard end. So if you're a lefty and you're struggling on a lathe, try and find a lathe that has left-hand threads on the outboard end, and it will be a joy to turn. So this is our real first look at the resin area, and I'm really happy with the color separation. Right there where my thumb was still needs to be trimmed up, but other than that, for the most part, it's trimmed up. Just that one spot near the rim. You know, again, at this stage, you're just taking really super light cuts. You can see how fine the shavings are. If you're heavy-handed here, you can get some chip out from the resin or even some tear out from the wood, and then of course that's not going to work out for you. So light cuts are the key. Once I had the rim trimmed up, there wasn't really a whole lot to remove there, because before I mounted this on the coal jaws, I actually took it over and just ran it on the top of my drum sander, and that kind of cleaned away a lot of the flashing, I'll call it flashing, that sticks on the side of the casting bucket. So, you know, there wasn't a whole lot to remove there. Here I'm being pretty aggressive. I know I've got a lot of resin to remove, so I'm not so concerned about chip out at this stage, because there's going to be lots of it. You're going to get a lot of chip out until that bevel can run on the surface of the wood, or the cutter will always stay in contact with the wood. If you have a sharp cutter, that will certainly help. So if you're having some issues, make sure you get a new cutter, and you'll see a big difference in the way the tool is cutting as opposed to when it's got a dull cutter on it. This tool uses cupped cutters. It doesn't use negative rake cutters like you see on other popular tools that you can find on the market. But what makes this tool so efficient is the fact that it's in a negative rake position. So the front of the tool is dipped downwards, and that makes the tool negative rake when you present it to the wood. So it acts like a negative rake scraper, when in reality the cutter isn't. So all I'm doing here is just trimming away that excess resin. We're getting pretty darn close to being where I want to be. Again, measuring that wall thickness is so important. That is for sure. So at the bottom of the video, you will see a tab that says Super Thanks. Now there has been a number of people sending me emails or commenting saying, I wish that, you've given me so much joy watching you turn and been such a big aid in helping me learn how to turn that I wish that I could donate money to you. So, I wasn't going to activate that tab, but I got contacted by YouTube and they're like, you really should do this to see, allow people to appreciate your work. So if you do want to buy me a cup of coffee, there is the super thanks tab at the very bottom of the video, and certainly anything that you put in there, I will actually take that comment and pin it to the top part of the comment section, and I do thank you in advance for that. But I'm really humbled when I hear people saying that they really wish that they had some way that they can, send me money and thank me for what I do here. So that is the one way that you certainly can. So I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Back with the Phoenix again, and the great thing that I really like about this tool as well is the fact that it's got a round shaft. So you can rotate that to find that sweet spot, and if you've been turning for a while, you know exactly what I mean. Finding that sweet spot is the key to getting these nice clean cuts, and with the rounded shaft, it allows you to do that. So what do you think so far? I think it's pretty nice. Got a few areas here that need to be filled in with the thin CA. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll give the outside a final trimming, and then we'll be able to do some sanding. For those who are curious, if I had to use deep cast in this casting, the long open period of over 12 hours, it would have probably in all likelihood sealed up all of these cracks and we wouldn't have to deal with this. But of course, getting that color separation was the key to this piece, and that's not the easiest thing to get with deep cast sometimes. We've done it on the channel here successfully, and hopefully we will do it again very soon. But I really like art cast, and it's just so easy to get that color separation, and it allows you to work on your project the next day. Just the 1 inch thick pore depth is the only limitation with it that I see anyway. There, I'll give that about 10-15 minutes, and then I'll be able to trim it up and sand. Like I mentioned last week, all we really want to do here is just kiss the surface of the bowl here with this tool. That way you get those fine shavings, especially after doing your last filling with the CA glue. There will be another one coming up, which is typical after sanding for a little bit. But for the most part, just kissing the surface. There, just got done taking my finishing cuts. Now I just wanted to define where the foot area is going to be. I like to do this before I start sanding. And speaking of sanding, these are the 3.5 inch stipple discs from sandpaper.ca. I start at 60 and I go all the way to 800. On this piece, I believe I stopped at 320 to do another filling, a final filling of CA glue. But other than that, the sanding actually went fairly well on this piece without too many problems at all. So here is the last final filling. I think this is the third time I've filled this piece. So first of all, I like to grind all the CA glue flat first before I turn the lathe on. The CA glue, once it hardens, is pretty tough stuff, and you'd be hard pressed to sand that the way it's set, especially at 320. Lower grits, you might be able to get away with it. That is the Triple E buffing compound from the BL buffing system. I like to buff the resin areas. Well, I buff the whole bowl, but by buffing the resin areas, it will get rid of all those fine scratches. And the last thing is use some denatured alcohol before the first coat of finish. All right, this is the first coat of Waterlux Original VOC Medium Sheen. How about that pretty little bowl? Character galore. Yes sir, yes sir. Really digging the gold in there too, that's for sure. All right, see you tomorrow for the second coat. Like I always do, before each coat of finish goes on, I buff with the Triple E buffing compound. Then of course clean the surface with the denatured alcohol to remove any of that residue that's left behind from buffing before the next coat of finish goes on. Good morning. This is the second coat of Waterlux Original VOC Medium Sheen. Well, it's certainly nicer with its second coat of finish. That resin is just wild. And the burl, well, it's just packed full of character too. If there is a third coat, I will do it the same as this one. But otherwise, we'll see when we're doing the foot. Looks pretty good though. Now that I'm happy with the piece, time to part it from the waste block. And yeah, this is typically the only time that I really get nervous in the turning process. You've got a lot of time, money, and effort invested in something, and it'd be very disappointing to see it go flying across the shop. So as you can see, I usually leave about an inch and a half on the very bottom, and that's enough to hold it in place, you know, as a general rule. There was hardly any resin on the bottom of this, so I just stuck with a 5/8 bowl gouge from David Ellsworth. And I believe I started sanding at 120 and finished it out at 320 on the very bottom here. All right, let's finish this video up and see who this beautiful bowl is for. All right, let's have a last little look at this beauty little bowl. There's two types of blue in here along with that gold. I like putting the gold in with maple burl. It almost, you know, it goes with it. A lot of times I really like contrasting colors, but sometimes it's good to put a gold in there to kind of anchor the other colors with the brown that's in the wood. There is the very bottom, still needs 2 more coats of finish on it, and then it will be ready to go to its new home. This piece ended up being 8 inches across and 3 3/4 tall. Now, I haven't revealed who this is for, so this was commissioned by a friend of mine named Cass, and this is for her mother, Christine. And I believe they're supposed to watch the video, and so hopefully she really enjoys her new Mother's Day gift. I think it's a beauty. All right, I'm going to set this down. Don't forget to put designer epoxy down below to be entered into the 3-gallon kit. And of course, that's only for Canada and the lower 48 US states. And of course, leave a comment down below so that you get a chance to win a bowl or a dish or a platter from me at every 5,000 subscribers. So please, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that. That way I can give away some more stuff. All right, I don't know what we're going to be doing next week. Still got a couple irons in the fire, but I think there's going to be something pretty cool. So please come on back for that. Okay, well, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends, and we'll see you next week.